Hello everyone, P141 here. So up on my table today I have a Baja Warrior mini bike. It's pretty beat up, as you can tell. Now what I'm going to be focusing on today is replacing the bearings on the rear wheel. Why am I replacing the bearings? This is why. The bearing is completely gone on this side and letting the wheel just flop around all over the place, and I'm sure the other side isn't much better. And it's causing the chain to be ridiculously loose and get chucked off the sprocket regularly and jam up. And overall, none of this is working well at all. So we're going to go ahead and replace those bearings. So first things first, let's get the wheel and tire off. So the wheel and tire came off without too much fuss. We've got our brake assembly over here, which is actually in surprisingly good shape. There's a lot of meat left on those pads, so we won't have to replace anything there. What's interesting is that the entire outer race is actually not there. A lot of it has broken off and fallen out. So there's actually only a little bit remaining of the outer race. Of course, the balls are all gone, and there's absolutely no sign of the inner race anywhere. So I have two theories for that. Theory number one is that it broke apart like the outer race did and fell out. Theory number two is that the previous owners took it apart, took out the inner race, and then put it back together, which would be absolutely insane. So I'm leaning towards number one, hopefully. So the other side actually looks a lot better. It looks a lot better. Reality, all the grease is dried out and it's really rough and it's grinding. So it needs bearings on both sides, but no surprise there. So we'll throw this up on the bench and get the remains of that race out and pop some new bearings in. Alright, so to get these bearings out, I'm supporting the wheel with some 4x4s underneath. And I'm going to be using this long chisel. Now this is only working for me because this bearing is completely busted out, which leaves this side wide open for me to get the chisel in. This would be way too big to fit through the center race if the bearings were intact. So if your bearings are intact, what you'll need is a very long drift or a steel rod that can fit through the race on one side, go all the way down, and rest on the inner race of the other bearing. But it's wide open, so I'm going to use this chisel. So hearing protection. Just pound it out, and that came out very easily. So there's our old bearing, one of them. Now the other side still has a sprocket on it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my 4x4s closer together so that they are resting not on the sprocket but on the flange that the sprocket bolts to. That way it won't break anything. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky because there's not really much for me to rest this on, which is one of the big reasons why I'm using a chisel instead of a drift, but we'll see if we can make this happen. Okay, so there's not enough of a lip for me to get the chisel on it, so I'm going to have to try something different. So this is the remains of the outer race. And you can see now why it was so hard to get it out. There was pretty much nothing for me to grab onto. I'm actually rather surprised that that method worked, although it wasn't ideal. It did deform this lip just a little bit, so I'll need to clean that up before I put the new bearing in. So for the Baja Warrior, you need a 6202 bearing, and you need to make sure you get the 2RS bearing. That means it has rubber seals on both sides. I've seen a number of these for sale that are shielded bearing. Those have the ZZ suffix. You don't want those because they will let water and dust and stuff get inside the bearing. You want the ones with the rubber shields. And to drive this in, we're just using a socket. This is a 26mm in case you were wondering. You can tell by the change in tone that it's all driven in. So now for the other side. So before we put in the next bearing, we want to put in our spacer. And now our bearing. And drive it in. And it's all seated. So now I'm going to swap this tire and we'll put it back on the mini bike. Alright, so everything's back together. I've got a nice new tire on there as well. And now with our new bearings, there's no more play or slop. Rotates nice and smoothly. So that's going to do it for this video. As always, parts will be listed down in the description below. Hit subscribe and the notification bell if you'd like to see more videos like this. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below.